Okay, this video is to show those of you who are technically inclined or handy with a screwdriver how to strip your boat down if the need ever arises. I'm doing this because there are some little tricks and little things you need to know before you do the job. So what's required is a large star screwdriver, a smaller one, side cutter, not because you're going to cut anything, but you need to use that to separate a plug. And then there's this fancy contraption. It's actually just a longish, thin screwdriver, just something I found that works for me. And I use this little crank handle on there. I'll put it down at the bottom here for the moment. When you begin, you always start by removing the cover. So I've taken the liberty of loosening those screws. This one is done. One more to go. Because we have to disconnect this cable. That is the cable from the GPS. It plugs into the autopilot, and when you lift the panel out, that can't be connected. So we remove the plate, get safely away, keep your screws on one side. Importantly, you can bend. This is mounted on rubber, so you can get a good angle on there, and you basically just pull on that plug, and out comes a little white plug. Don't pull in the other direction. It's plugged into the module on this side. We have bonded it to some extent, so it's firm, but if you pull hard on here, you'll unplug it, and then you're going to suffer to put it back. So unplug that, put it to one side, and now we're going to remove all the screws around the panel. But before we start that, we're going to uncouple. We're going to uncouple the quick links. Now you don't take those screws out, because then you lose and remove the arms, because then you lose all the positions. So you simply leave the arms there, and you undo the quick link, close it again, and move the little slider back, because whilst you're working, that little brass bit will fall off, and then you can't secure this back onto the arm. Same on that side. Open it, take it off, and then close it again and push the link back in. Be careful, don't hurt yourselves. Make sure that you've got the pin, and don't put your thumb too close, because I've actually poked myself a few times with that. Right, now it's easy. Now we use little trusty hand powered screwdriver. You're going to see that the screws have got different lengths. So place them opposite to where they're going to go, or where they're going to go back in. Sorry, that one like that. That can stay up there. Okay, so these front five screws are all the same length and the same size. So once you've got them all out, don't forget where they go back in. It's the front five are the same. When you get to the back, you've basically got on the outer side of this block, you've got a long screw. On the inside, a shorter screw. Place that there. Similarly on this side, long one, and then a shorter one. Same diameter, that goes there. Okay, so now you take these arms with these little links properly pushed in, and you slide it away underneath the deck like so. Do that. Okay, now you can lift the panel. Lift it gently, slowly. In fact, before we do that, before I lift it properly, coming off the back of this panel are two pairs of wires. One pair is going to the meter, and one pair is going to the switch. So you basically want to bring those forward, find them in the boat, bring them forward. You'll see these two are the matching pair. Yeah, so essentially, when you get to the plugs, importantly, don't ever pull on the wires. Always get a hold of the plugs, and you can twist them, but twist on the plug, not on the wire. You can unplug it like that. Then you can unplug this one. If you can't get it apart, if it's very tight, it can happen, it's very tight, you can take a lighter. Find one very, very tight and you really can't move it, you can just use a lighter. Don't burn your fingers. Use a lighter and just heat it up slightly, and then you find that it loosens the outer casing. Oops, got to be a little careful, because if you overdo it, then it will make it difficult to put it back in again. So let me just... So that's actually... Okay, so there we go. So now you just work the plug in and out so that the covering does not close. Now I can get the plug out. Okay, so that's the battery. That's these two here. This pair here is for the switch, and then you're going to find another pair coming off the back, and that, okay, it may be that you can get to them more easily if you lift the panel. Let's just have a look. Okay, so on the side, before we take it out completely, this is one of the most important things. There's the antenna cable. Never pull on this connector. Just put a side cut in the middle and just gently squeeze and open, and that will force it apart. If you pull on here, these cables are very light, and if you dislodge this, you're going to battle to find anybody who's going to put that plug on for you. So okay, so side cut in the center and just wiggle it open. Now you can lift the panel up. Okay, now we can better see the plug for the meter. Let's see if I can get to it. Yes, I can. Okay, so same story. I'll work on the plugs themselves, not on the cable. Disconnect. You'll see their colors, so blue to blue and brown to brown. Okay, so there we go. So now that's all disconnected. So essentially the panel is now deinstalled, and this runs down to the motor. It's got these 3 cables. We'll take that foam block out. That's just to secure the wires. Very important to secure these wires against the side wall like that. Otherwise, if they're running around every time you move your battery in and out, you scrape the coating on the wires. So you secure them with a little firm block down the bottom, and this block on top, and it keeps it nice and tight against the side. All right, now to the actual motor. We are required to loosen. Okay, I think let me start with the most difficult one first. Down at the let's put these out of the way, and that out of the way. Okay, the hardest part of this whole job is to get to some screws that are down the back of this gearbox. So, like, the gearbox sits in the cradle like that, and it's got this bracket, 2 screws in there and 2 screws onto the motor tray. So you've got to get those 2 screws out, not those 2, fortunately, it's the ones that are shown, but very difficult to see down the back of the gearbox. And I'm going to show you a contraption that I've got here. It's not, although those are star screws, I find that a small flat, very small flat, works better. I get it into the screw. Once I find the screw, and then I can use my little crank handle and very easily get that screw. Otherwise, you're going to struggle. Your dumpy is too short and thick, and a star screwdriver generally doesn't work well. So use a long, thin, pokey screwdriver. Okay, so now having located the other one and gotten the tip of that long, pokey screwdriver into it, unscrew that as well. Now, importantly, loosening them will not allow you to get the motor out. They've got to be both loosened and removed completely from the hole. So use your fingers to make sure they come out completely out of the bracket. Next stage is to remove the motor cover. I'll make life much easier by doing it this way. Okay, try to pick up all the screws without dropping them in. Right, now you lift this cover, get that out, and now you basically slide the motor away from the coupling. In the boat is the drive coupling. You've got to slide it off the coupling. But important, I want to tell you something very important, interesting, but also important, that before you actually uncouple, before you actually take the motor apart, to do this, mark the 2 halves of the coupling. You would imagine that it wouldn't matter which way around they go. It does, strangely enough. Depending on how the manufacturers have machined these, we have found that it runs smoother when on one side than on the other side. So mark the way that it is. So you put your dot, put your grub screws in line, and then put the dot there, then rotate, and sorry, talking nonsense. Locate the grub screws on the drive shaft, and then mark the other half of the coupling like that. So on the motor side, you have a similar arrangement, also 2 grub screws, but you want it to line up exactly like that again, and then the drivetrain runs smoother. Okay, so once you've got that, you simply maneuver the motor off that, and you can lift it out. You have to rotate it so you don't tear the little rubber. Okay, now you've basically got the motor, control panel, and that's completely removed from the boat. Okay, so essentially now with the motor out and the panel out, you can obviously get in to clean around the motor tray, blow out any dust. This is not something you do willy-nilly. You don't take your boat apart for no reason. You might take it apart if you have to overhaul the motor or the gearbox or the drivetrain or change the coupling or the buffer, but it's not something you do as part of first-line servicing. But when it does become necessary, this is how you do it. The next stage will basically be showing you how to put it back together again. It may seem like it's just the reverse, but there are some tricks to that as well.